911 emergency, what are you reporting?
Yeah, we need an ambulance on Fairfax and Wilshire. Please, Los Angeles. We have a man shot. We're in the car right now. We're rolling to the hospital.
And we just came, and shit. I ain't gonna go into details like that, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, you got it in the book. You done played it, everything else, you know what I'm saying?
So what happens next?
And we just came, and shit. I ain't gonna go into details like that, you know what I'm saying?
Hospital. What you're about to hear has never been told like this before. These are the final moments, the last words, and the hidden footage that investigators kept locked away for almost 30 years, and it's about to flip everything we thought we knew about Tupac and Biggie's murders. The night Tupac was killed.
I had got a phone call from a guy called Waynesworth Hall. I think it's Waynesworth Hall. His street name was Unique from Mecca Audio. He was a drug kingpin. He said, yo, Gene. Nah, the girl Dawn called me. He said, yo, Unique is on the phone. And I said, yeah? I said, what's up, Unique? He said, vest up, and the phone hung up.
The night that changed hip-hop forever. Let's go back to September 7th, 1996, a wild night in Las Vegas that started with celebration and ended in chaos. But before we get into the explosion of events, there's something major you need to understand, something most people still have no clue about. That night, cameras were everywhere, witnesses were everywhere, security guards, cops, hotel workers, party people, hundreds of eyes saw pieces of what really went down. Yet somehow, for nearly 3 decades, the truth stayed buried under silence, fear, and what many now believe was a carefully planned cover-up by people desperate to keep the real story from ever surfacing. Tupac Amaru Shakur had just watched Mike Tyson destroy Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand. The fight barely lasted 2 minutes. Tyson knocked him out in the first round so fast that fans were still sitting down when it was already over. But what went down after that fight would shake the entire music world and echo for generations. That night set off a chain reaction of violence that would steal 2 of hip-hop's brightest legends and leave scars across the culture that still haven't healed. And here's the part that most people never saw. The MGM Grand's lobby surveillance cameras caught the exact moment that triggered it all. Investigators later called it the spark that lit the fuse. On that footage, Tupac and his death row entourage are seen spotting Orlando Anderson, a known member of the Southside Compton Crips, near the elevator.
I said, yo, Puff, I got some intel, bro. He said, what's up, Gene? I said, I got some intel that people gonna come and try to kill us. He said, Gene, I don't wanna hear that shit. I don't wanna hear that shit, Gene. I said, you don't wanna hear that shit? F what you mean you don't wanna hear that shit? He said, yo, Gene, you ain't gotta go if you don't wanna go.
That moment, right there, changed everything. What happened next would send shockwaves through music, through the streets, and through history itself. The recognition was instant, and the reaction was explosive. Tupac didn't hesitate for even a second. The cameras caught every bit of it. Tupac stepping up to Orlando Anderson, asking straight up if he was from the South, and then it popped off. The footage shows Tupac swinging first, connecting clean, dropping Anderson, and then Suge Knight and the rest of the crew jumping right in. It turned into a wild, brutal scene that erupted in seconds. The black and white security footage looks like something out of a movie. Bodies colliding, fists flying, people screaming, security guards rushing in to break it up.
So, a gentleman described that they were ice grilling at them. I was there that night and I saw the same ice grilling that he described it. I just saw that they were looking over there like, yo, these cats think that shit is sweet out here. And everybody was on their phones. Cellular phones were just becoming popular out there. So people were on their phones making calls.
Within a minute, it was over. Security shut it down fast. No one got arrested. The cops brushed it off like it was just another Vegas celebrity fight, something that happened all the time in that city of flashing lights. But that 1 minute, that short burst of violence became the fuse that lit an unstoppable chain reaction. That single minute would soon lead straight to murder. What most people never realized was that this wasn't random, not even close. Tupac didn't just spot some guy he didn't like and decide to start swinging. This had history behind it. Just 2 months before that night, July 1996, Orlando Anderson and his crew had allegedly tried to rob Trevon Lane, a Mob Piru member and Death Row affiliate, inside a Foot Locker in Lakewood, California. Their target? A Death Row Records pendant. Not just a chain, but a symbol of loyalty and power in the gang world. That kind of disrespect wasn't something anyone could ignore. That kind of move demanded a response. It demanded payback. In that world, honor had to be defended no matter the cost.
He's sitting there with a cane, which looked like a staff. He was in that Versace shirt, so he looked like he was a king in those shades, like he was just sitting there like he was the man, the king, when in fact, he had a broken leg and he couldn't move.
So when Tupac saw Anderson standing there in the MGM Grand Lobby, it wasn't coincidence. It was revenge. It was about respect. It was about showing everyone watching that Death Row Records couldn't be disrespected, not by anyone. But that message, that act of pride, would end up costing him everything. Just hours later, after the chaos, Tupac was back at the Luxor Hotel buzzing with energy. He couldn't stop talking about the fight, telling his girlfriend Kadada Jones and his cousin how it went down. He was pumped, still riding the adrenaline, proud of what he'd done. He swapped his fancy outfit for jeans and a basketball jersey, ready to hit the night again. And here's the haunting part. Someone offered him a bulletproof vest before he left, but Tupac turned it down. He said it was too hot. September in Las Vegas can feel like an oven. That one decision, that one moment would haunt hip-hop forever. It was over 100 degrees that day, and even at night, the heat still clung to the air like fire. Tupac didn't want to sweat through his clothes or feel trapped in body armor, so he left the bulletproof vest behind. That one choice, made for comfort, would turn deadly. Around 10 p.m., the Death Row convoy rolled out, heading for Club 662, a flashy spot owned by Suge Knight, where Tupac was supposed to perform at a charity event.
The guy walked away. You know what I'm saying? So then next thing you know, less than 5 minutes from that, hear this guy come down. He dressed in a blue suit, white shirt, blue bow tie. You understand? He comes and he just, it's a pillow right here. Puff is in the driveway.
About 10 cars deep, packed with Death Row affiliates, bodyguards, and hangers-on, it looked more like a parade of power than a simple ride to the club. Tupac was in the front passenger seat of Suge Knight's black 1996 BMW 750iL, a sleek luxury ride that screamed money, fame, and danger all at once. That shine made them an easy target under the neon Vegas lights. Between 11 p.m. and 11:05 p.m., something strange went down. A pair of Las Vegas police officers on bikes pulled the BMW over, said the music was too loud and the car didn't have visible plates. The plates were found tucked inside the trunk, so it seemed like no big deal. They were let go without a ticket. The whole stop took maybe 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes would change everything. That tiny delay put them in the exact wrong place, at the exact wrong time. Fate, it seemed, was ticking by the second, and it was right on schedule.
He says to me, Gene, if you don't get in this car, you ain't gonna never work for Bad Boy ever again.
At about 11:10 p.m., Suga's BMW came to a stop at the red light on East Flamingo Road and Koval Lane. On the left side, a car with 2 women pulled up. Tupac, ever the entertainer, leaned out the window with that $1 million grin, chatting, inviting them to Club 662. He was laughing, full of life, completely unaware that death was closing in from the opposite side. Then it happened. A white Cadillac rolled up smooth and silent on the right side. Inside that car sat a man who would later shake the world with his words, Keith D, real name Dwayne Keith Davis. He's the one who decades later would be arrested in September 2023 for orchestrating Tupac's murder. But here's the twist. Long before that arrest, Keith D had already talked about it. In multiple interviews, he casually described being in that white Cadillac the night Tupac was shot.
Goes to open the door. Goes to open the door. Fucking, next thing you know, you hear it say, pow! Pap, 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 pap. Yeah. 5 or 6 cars were like, pap, 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 right?
As if it were just another story. He bragged about it for years, seemingly not realizing, or maybe not even caring, that he was basically confessing to being part of one of the most shocking murders in American history. What happened next hit like thunder in the desert night. About 13 shots blasted out from a .40 caliber gun. The sound was deafening, trapped in that tight space between the BMW and the Cadillac. In seconds, chaos exploded. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. One of those shots tore through his right lung, causing massive internal damage that no doctor in Las Vegas could ever fix. Suge Knight behind the wheel got clipped too. A bullet fragment grazed his head, but somehow, through the blood and panic, he kept driving. Adrenaline, shock, pure instinct. Whatever it was, it pushed him forward.
He was parked on the corner, because there's no way he could have got on the side unless his car was already parked there. You understand what I'm saying?
The white Cadillac sped off into the darkness while Suge's BMW, tires shredded from the gunfire, kept rolling. He managed to drive nearly a mile before the same bike cops, the exact same ones who had pulled them over just minutes earlier, caught up again. Think about that. A few more minutes at that traffic stop and the shooting might never have happened. Unreleased footage shown in recent court hearings gives us one last look at Tupac before it all went down, standing outside a hotel, laughing and chatting with a couple of women before climbing into the BMW. He looked calm, full of life, totally unaware that death was waiting just a few blocks away. That smile, that moment of peace, it's haunting now, knowing what came next. Then came the aftermath, flashing lights, smoke in the air, chaos everywhere. Retired Las Vegas officer Chris Carroll was the first to reach the scene. Years later, he described pulling Tupac's bloody body from the passenger seat, desperate for answers. He asked over and over, "Who shot you?" hoping for a dying confession that could crack the case wide open. According to Carroll's account, Tupac, barely breathing, chest ripped open, eyes full of fire, locked onto him.
Somebody told me it was a hospital 2 blocks away from the Peterson Museum.
Okay, so you guys go to Cedars-Sinai.
Right, but it took us like 30 minutes to get there.
And with his last bit of strength, he answered with 2 words, "Fuck you!" That was it, raw defiance to the very end. Even as his life slipped away, he refused to give law enforcement a single name. That moment, those final words froze in time, the last act of a man who lived and died by his own code. Some people called it loyalty, staying silent to the end. Others saw it as pure tragedy, a young man dying with the truth locked inside him forever. But what really went down inside that hospital during those 6 long, painful days before Tupac finally passed stayed hidden for years. When parts of the story finally surfaced, they didn't bring closure. They blew everything wide open. New questions came flooding in. Who really wanted Tupac dead? And why did it take almost 30 years for someone to finally face charges? And then, like history repeating itself, came another murder that would send shockwaves through hip-hop. The killing of Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G, wasn't some random street hit. It was strategic, cold, and perfectly timed. March 9th, 1997, Los Angeles. 6 months after Tupac's death, Biggie was in the city promoting his new album, Life After Death. Let that title sink in for a second. Life After Death. The irony hits like a gut punch now. It's almost like he knew something was coming, like he could feel death closing in around him. That night, the vibe was off. According to multiple witnesses and people who were there, Biggie's death wasn't just another drive-by, it was a setup, a professional hit. Everything about it felt planned, deliberate, too clean to be random. The warnings were there, clear as day, but nobody wanted to believe them. One of the most chilling accounts comes from Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard. He says he got a strange call before the after party at the Peterson Automotive Museum.
And he said, on his phone, he said, yo, I think they got one of those bad boy niggas. They said they was gonna get him.
2 words that still haunt him. Vest up. It was a warning. The call supposedly came from a federal prisoner, a man locked up in a high-security facility with El Chapo himself. Somehow this man knew that something terrible was about to go down that night. Now think about that. A call from inside federal custody warning about a hit that was hours away. That's not coincidence, that's connection. Gene Deal didn't ignore it either. He didn't brush it off as paranoia. He tried to do something about it. He went straight to Andre Harrell's house, where Diddy was staying, and told him face to face that he'd gotten intel saying someone was coming to kill them. Imagine the tension in that room, the disbelief, the fear, the confusion. They'd already lost Tupac. The streets were buzzing with rumors, labels were at war, and now a man behind bars was warning that another icon was about to be taken out, and the worst part, hours later, that warning came true, in front of the world's eyes. Gene Deal risked everything to deliver that warning. He straight up told Diddy what he'd heard, danger was coming. But according to Gene, Diddy brushed it off like it was nothing. He told him, Gene, you ain't gotta go if you don't want to. Just like that. No concern, no hesitation. Diddy dismissed the whole thing completely. He didn't want to hear about any threats, didn't want the mood ruined, didn't want to believe it was real. And so, despite the warning, they went to the party anyway, walking straight into what witnesses later called a setup, an ambush waiting to happen.
Someone from your car
That's what happened.
started shooting at Tupac and Suge.
That night's party, the official Soul Train Music Awards after party at the Peterson Automotive Museum, was massive. Over 1,000 guests packed inside. The guest list was wild. Faith Evans, Aaliyah, Queen Latifah, Chris Tucker, music execs, label heads, the entire industry under one roof. On the surface, it was pure glamour and celebration, but beneath all that glitz, something darker was brewing. Hidden in that crowd were gang members, both Bloods and Crips, people who had no reason to be at a music event like that. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. It wasn't just a party that felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. That's where Sean Bolden comes in, a music industry insider who was there that night. He later said he saw the setup happening in real time without realizing what it was. He noticed the looks being exchanged, the whispered conversations, the people stepping outside to make calls, others moving through the crowd with purpose. There was coordination, movement, energy. But it didn't click until it was too late.
Not one person came out and said, Eric Von Zip ain't never have no check in his account for $1 million from Black Ground Records. They could check Black Ground Records account. That's easier than checking Eric Michael. They was in the music business. If he wrote a check for $1 million, then somebody had to, what? Approve that.
By the time he understood, Biggie was already gone. Biggie himself wasn't even in top shape that night. He had broken or fractured his fibula bones so he could barely walk. He needed a cane just to move around, and that made him vulnerable. He couldn't work the room like everyone else, couldn't slip away from people he didn't trust, couldn't even move fast if something went wrong. So he stayed in one place. And everyone came to him. Bottles flowed his way. Women surrounded him. People showed him love, all paying tribute to hip-hop royalty. To outsiders, it looked like power. Like Biggie was sitting there on a throne, demanding attention and respect. But in reality, he was trapped in place, unable to move, completely exposed. He couldn't see the storm that was already forming around him. And in just a few hours, that throne would turn into a target. The way things looked that night and the way they really were couldn't have been more different. People thought Biggie was acting cocky, sitting still like he owned the room. But that couldn't be further from the truth. He wasn't showing off. He was hurt, trapped, and completely vulnerable. And the people who wanted him gone, they were watching, calculating every weakness, every move. Around 12:30 a.m., the fire department came through and shut the party down, said it was overcrowded, too much smoke, total fire hazard. Over 1,000 people pouring out into the streets of Los Angeles, the night buzzing with tension and noise. That's when things got dangerous. The safety of that packed museum turned into the chaos of a dark street, and in that shift, all protection vanished. Gene Deal, still focused and alert, moved fast. He lined up the cars right outside the museum doors so Biggie could get in without struggling. Biggie could barely walk, so Gene was thinking smart. Get his client out quick, get him home safe. But then something strange happened, something that sent chills through his body. Gene looked toward the driveway and saw a man walking toward the vehicles. Blue suit, white shirt, bow tie. A sharp look that didn't match the crowd spilling out of the party. That same description.
That's why he wanted Big at this party. You understand? Because you gotta realize Big was supposed to be in London.
Blue suit, bow tie would later match what witnesses told police about the shooter. Gene's instincts kicked in. He revealed his weapon, ready to protect the team. But here's the eerie part. The man didn't flinch, didn't run, didn't even look surprised. He just stopped, locked eyes with Gene, then turned around and calmly walked away, like a professional adjusting his plan after getting spotted. But Gene wasn't letting his guard down. His gut screamed that something was about to happen. He wanted to ride outside the car, gun in hand, ready to show strength, a visible warning to anyone thinking about pulling something. But Diddy told him no, ordered him to get inside. So Gene followed orders, against his instincts, against his training, against the warning screaming in his head. Moments later, At about 12:47 a.m., Biggie's green GMC Suburban was stopped at a red light on Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue. The night was quiet, the city lights flashing across the windshield, and then, out of the shadows, a dark Chevrolet Impala rolled up alongside them. Everything slowed down just seconds before the moment that would end the life of one of hip-hop's greatest legends. Then came the sound, pop, 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 pop. 4 shots tore through the night like thunder. Biggie was hit. 4 bullets in total, but one of them was fatal. The deadly shot entered through his right hip, ripping through his colon, liver, heart, and left lung before stopping. The damage was catastrophic, the kind of wound that gives you minutes, maybe seconds, before everything shuts down. But there's one detail that still keeps Gene Deal awake after all these years. Something that made him realize this wasn't some random street shooting. The shooter's car...
And it's a funny thing, I kind of realized how powerful Tupac and I was. You know what I'm saying? Because we 2 individual people, we waged a coastal beef. You know what I'm saying? One man against one man made a whole West Coast hate a whole East Coast and vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
Wasn't moving. It wasn't a rolling drive-by. It was parked, waiting, positioned perfectly at the corner for the ambush. You understand what I'm saying? Gene would later say. This wasn't chaos, it was calculated. Someone had planned it to the second. Someone knew they'd be leaving that party. Someone knew exactly what route they'd take. Someone knew where to park that Impala to line up the perfect kill shot. That wasn't coincidence, that was strategy. That was murder. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, what happened next raises even more questions. There was a hospital just 2 blocks away from the Peterson Automotive Museum, barely a 2-minute drive with sirens on. 2 blocks could have made the difference between life and death, but instead of heading there, the driver, Kenny, took them all the way to Cedars-Sinai, almost 30 minutes away. 30 minutes with Biggie bleeding out in the back seat, his organs failing one by one. By the time they finally reached the hospital, it was too late. 30 minutes of blood loss, 30 minutes of fading heartbeat, 30 minutes that could have saved him, gone. At 1:15 a.m., Christopher Wallace, Biggie Smalls, the Notorious B.I.G, was pronounced dead. Just 24 years old, a father, a son, one of the most iconic rappers to ever touch a mic, gone in an instant. But death wasn't the end of this story. It was only the beginning of the mystery. Questions started stacking up faster than anyone could answer them. Who was the man in the blue suit? Why did Diddy allegedly ignore the warning? And why, of all things, did they drive half an hour to a hospital when one sat right there, 2 blocks away? None of it added up. And then came another haunting piece of the puzzle, something Gene Deal swears he overheard outside the museum before the shooting. DJ Quick, a respected figure in the West Coast scene, supposedly said something that still echoes in Gene's head to this day. He said, "They said they was going to get them." That line hit like ice. Somebody knew. Somebody had been talking. The hit wasn't some secret. It was common knowledge in certain circles. And yet, nobody warned Biggie. Nobody tried to stop it. Nobody did a thing. The setup, the silence, the strange choices that night. It all points to one dark truth. There were connections behind the scenes that they never...
Untimely demise or whatever, I gotta be the one to flip it and take my power and flip it like, yo, they gotta be dead, you know what I'm saying? Because he can't do that. You know what I'm saying? He can't be the one to be like, yo, I wanna squash it because he's gone. So I gotta take the weight on both sides.
For nearly 30 years, the murders of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls have been treated like 2 totally separate stories. 2 cases divided by city lines and police departments. Tupac's killing was handled by Las Vegas authorities, Biggie's by the LAPD. Different cities, different detectives, different systems that never seem to talk to each other. And for decades, both investigations hit dead ends, left in limbo, with officers either unwilling or unable to connect the dots that were staring them right in the face. But what if those dots were never missing? What if the truth, the links between both murders, has been sitting in plain sight all along? Witnesses have been speaking for years, but nobody wanted to hear them. Hidden footage, buried testimonies, and chilling confessions all point towards something far bigger than just East Coast versus West Coast beef. The web stretches through gang rivalries, music industry money, and whispers of possible police corruption that might reach way higher than anyone's willing to admit. Think about it. What if these cases stayed unsolved on purpose? Because solving them might have exposed too many powerful names, too many careers, and too much money tied to one of the darkest chapters in hip-hop history. Let's start with what Dwayne Keith D. Davis has been saying for years and saying on camera in multiple interviews given freely and almost casually. Keith D. laid out what went down inside that white Cadillac the night Tupac was shot. No hesitation, no lawyer, just words spilling out like a confession. He explained how it happened. So someone from your car started shooting at Tupac and Suge Knight starts blasting. You say he looks over, he sees you. That's the story he told. Keith D. flat out admitted he was sitting in the front passenger seat of that white Cadillac. He said his nephew, Orlando Anderson, the same guy Tupac fought at the MGM Grand earlier that night, was in the back seat. He even said the shots came from the back of that car. But here's the chilling part. Keith D. also said that in the middle of that gunfire, Suge Knight looked straight at him. Their eyes met in that brief, violent moment. Killer and target locked in pure chaos. It's a detail that sends shivers down your spine, especially knowing how openly he's told this story for years. To anyone who'd listen. And just when you think the story couldn't get darker, it does. In his 2019 memoir, Compton Street Legend, and in several interviews before and after, Keith D. claimed that Sean Diddy Combs himself allegedly offered him $1 million to kill Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight, a claim that, if true, ties one of hip-hop's biggest moguls directly to the bloodiest feud in music history. That single allegation has kept fans, investigators, and journalists digging for years, because if Keith D. was telling even part of the truth, it means the murders of Tupac and Biggie weren't just random acts of violence, they were moves in a much bigger, much dirtier game. According to Keith D., the supposed $1 million offer to take out Tupac went down during the peak of the East Coast-West Coast War, the most explosive moment in hip-hop history. He claimed the deal was set up through an associate named Eric "Zip" Martin, a man known to move quietly behind the scenes. $1 million? That's the price Keith D. says was put on Tupac's head. $1 million to erase one of the most powerful voices in rap. Sean Diddy Combs has completely denied every bit of it. He's called the story pure fiction and utterly ridiculous. His lawyers have fought these claims for years, and Las Vegas police have publicly confirmed that Diddy was never listed as a suspect in Tupac's murder. But no matter how many times he denies it, those rumors refuse to die. They've been whispered through studios, street corners, and courtrooms for decades, and they just won't disappear. And then there's Gene Deal, the man who spent years by Diddy's side as his bodyguard, who saw the inner circle up close. Gene's not out here saying Diddy ordered a hit. He's too smart for that. But he is saying something strange went down after Tupac's death. According to Gene, he personally saw $1 million check in Eric "Zip" Martin's possession shortly after Tupac was killed, a check that he's been asking investigators to trace for years. Gene keeps saying the same thing. Follow the money, because money leaves a trail. Checks get recorded, banks keep receipts, accounts don't lie. If someone truly wanted the truth, all they'd have to do is track that paper trail. But for some reason, no one seems eager to do it. That's what bothers him most. The silence, the hesitation, the feeling that people don't want the truth uncovered. The truth is out there, in footage, in files, in stories that never got the attention they deserved. The question now is, will anyone finally have the courage to follow it all the way to the end? Now, if you believe these stories need to be heard, like this video, share it, and drop a comment below. Tell us what you think really happened that night. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because this story is far from over.